Hey Frag fam, what is going on? I hope you guys are all doing well today. Elliot here, welcome back to The Fragrance Well. So, we're almost a quarter into the year of 2025. As you guys know, I tend to like to do a little wrap up, if you will, of what I've added to my collection so far. And I am pleased to say that this year I'm doing a lot better than last year in terms of not adding too many fragrances. If you remember 2 years ago, I added like 82 fragrances to my collection in 1 year. That is a ridiculous number. Last year I did reduce that number, but it was still like I think 50 or 60. So it was reduced, but not by much. This year I said, okay, I'm definitely cutting that number down. And I actually just kind of did the quick math. If I'm buying on average 4 to 5 fragrances every single month, that's gonna be 60 fragrances at the end of the year. So far the average is about 3 fragrances, which is still a lot. That's still 36 fragrances being added in 1 year. But I think that's a little bit more manageable because 3 fragrances a month, I can actually spend a lot of time with those 3 fragrances, especially if they're relatively in season. And that's kind of what I've been wanting to do. I've been buying a lot of fragrances and not really spending a lot of time with them because I have too many and I still want to wear what I got in my cabinet too. So that's why I've reduced the number of fragrances I've added. But anyway, I've got 8 so far this year. So that's a good number so far. And I'm just kind of go over all of them in terms of what I've added. Just talk about the fragrance really, maybe what I'd use it for, what I have used it for, etc. Let me see, I'm just kind of looking. Every fragrance I have has been worn at least one time. And I might wear another one today just to give it another wear. So anyway, yeah, that's what we're doing today. It's just kind of a wrap up of what I've been doing so far. So before we get into the video, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you do like this content, and please hit that bell icon and enable notifications so you can be notified when I upload new videos. Let's get into it. Alright guys, so I'm basically presenting these fragrances to you in the order that I got them for the most part. So this is not ranked or anything like that. That's something I kind of like to do at the end of the year where I kind of rank them sort of. So the first one's coming from Nasomato, and this is going to be Baraonda. Nasomato Baraonda. If you're familiar with this scent, this one here is all about the booziness. This fragrance to me literally smells like bourbon. It's like a bourbon fragrance. It's an ode to bourbon. It's an ode to a bourbon cocktail. It's an ode to a bourbon-based old-fashioned, a smoked old-fashioned, in my opinion, and I am here for it. I absolutely love this fragrance. I had heard about it plenty before I bought it, and you know the good thing about these Nasomato fragrances is from a discounter perspective, you can get most of them for around $100. Some of them are going to be right at that price point, some of them maybe a little bit higher, but they're all around the $100 price point. And to be fair, I mean, they are 30 milliliters, but if you know anything about these fragrances, they are ridiculously strong. This one is certainly no different. It's a powerhouse. You don't need a lot of sprays to have a successful wear with this scent. But outside of the fact that it smells like an old fashioned, you could say it's a little bit spicy, it's woody, it's a little bit smoky, and kind of ambery as well. Maybe a little bit of a resinous vibe in there to all kind of create that old-fashioned nature to this fragrance. But yeah, if you're like boozy fragrances, I see why people have always kind of recommended this one as a good boozy scent if you're into boozy fragrances, because it's definitely a good one. I mean, that's literally all this fragrance is trying to portray is great booze, and at this point it is by far the most boozy fragrance I have in my collection. But I absolutely love the way this stuff smells, and I enjoy wearing it as well. So once again, from Nasomato, this is Baraonda. All right, next one's coming from Xerjoff, and it's going to be Tony Iommi Deified. Iommi Deified from Xerjoff. This is the second iteration of the whole Tony Iommi series made in collaboration with the rock, or should I say metal legend, if you will. I got a sample of this late last year, and I do know that this came out last year. I can't remember when though. But I did get a sample of it, and I was absolutely blown away by it. I sprayed that sample on my skin, and when I say I could not stop smelling that stuff, it really captivated me. I found it to be incredibly intoxicating. Certainly is a bonus that my wife actually enjoyed the scent too. So I said, all right, I'm just going to kind of look for that one on discounters. I had seen it on discounters at that point, but now I'm just going to look out for what I would consider the best price for it and probably grab it, and that is exactly what happened. I grabbed this in January. So what you get from this fragrance is rose, leather, patchouli, a touch of spice. I think kind of saffron centered type of spice. There's probably some cinnamon in here as well, and a little bit of a sweetness in there to balance all of that out. But I think this stuff smells delectable, delicious, aggressive, but yet still well balanced, if you will. A great evening wear scent. This one certainly can be a great wear for the cooler months. If it's still cool where you are, then that's something you could still rock. I would still wear it even if it's warmer out, but definitely in evening time and probably be indoors. So this one's gonna kind of go by the wayside and probably get used more later on this year if it does cool off again. Sometimes in Florida we don't get any coolness, but we've been getting a couple cooler months for the last few years, but who knows if that's going to be the case this year. But all that being said, it's a heavier scent, definitely more cool weather focused, so it's not going to be something that's going to be heavy in my rotation the more it warms up. But boy, this is a great fragrance. I'm glad I got this one. Once again from Xerjoff, we have got Tony Iommi Deified. All right, and another one coming from Xerjoff. This one here is More Than Words. Xerjoff More Than Words. This is another Xerjoff fragrance that I've heard a lot about. I had smelled it at some point in wherever I smelled it from, and it was just kind of off the atomizer, and I was like, all right, that smell does intrigue me, but this was kind of like a half blind buy. I say half blind buy because I actually have smelled it, but I haven't really tested it. I haven't worn it. I don't even think I even smelled it on a tester strip. It was only from the atomizer. So I was kind of just jumping into this one, but I kind of read up on what it is, and I said, yeah, I'll go for that. But this one is a oud rose, and to me, amber fragrance. Oud rose, saffron is kind of the normal combination. I do think you get a light saffron-like spice in this, but I don't know if I'd call it a full-blown oud rose saffron fragrance. To me, it's a little bit more of a oud rose amber fragrance because it gets ambery as some of the other elements dissipate from this fragrance. But you're definitely hit right in the face with a pretty clear oud and a pretty delectable rose as soon as you spray it. But yeah, this stuff smells awesome. Very powerful fragrance. I've heard people say that a little goes a long way with this fragrance. They were not lying. This scent here definitely packs a punch. It's another one that's going to be a little bit more of a cooler weather scent for most people. And that's probably going to be the case with me with this one as well. If I do wear it as it continues to warm up, it's going to be if I'm indoors and probably during the evening months. But that being said, it's a oud rose fragrance that I don't think is redundant out of the oud rose fragrances I have in my collection. And I actually added quite a few of those last year. So going forward, I definitely want to be careful about adding oud rose fragrances to my collection because I don't want to have too much redundancy with that. So once again from Xerjoff, this here is More Than Words. All right, guys, next one's coming from Christian Provenzano Parfums. This is Ambre d'Or. Christian Provenzano Parfums Ambre d'Or. So this one here is, if you know anything about Christian Provenzano's fragrances, you know he tends to make very high quality, usually long lasting scents. A lot of them are actually very derivative, if not outright clones of very popular scents. And frankly, it's not that different in this line. I'm not saying every fragrance is like that, but he's definitely got some that you can definitely liken to popular releases. For me, this one, can't think of anything that smells like anything else. With this one, I haven't smelled anything quite like this. It is overall a very artificial smelling fragrance, but it's basically a fresh, slightly spicy, somewhat watery amber fragrance, like a warm weather amber fragrance. So this is a great one for me to actually continue to wear as the warmer temperatures continue to roll in. This is a great spring scent. It's a great summer scent. It's not really tied to any scenario. You can wear this for pretty much anything. In my opinion, this fragrance here really likens itself to being kind of a use it, do it all fragrance, almost blue style, sort of, if you will. And interestingly enough, I forgot if I mentioned this when I first talked about this fragrance on the channel. On Parfumo.net at least, the fragrance is actually rated pretty 50-50. It's pretty low. I think some people just don't jive with the fact that this is very artificial smelling and kind of straightforward and basic, if you will, compared to some of the other fragrances he has from this house. I imagine from the standpoint of an American market, this fragrance here would do very, very well in the American market, but maybe not quite as well in a European market. That's just a guess. because I'm pretty sure anybody that's rated this fragrance on Parfumo is in Europe, as that is a European site, and these fragrances have been available in Europe far longer than they've been available in the States. But that's neither here nor there. This fragrance did sell out at my local niche perfumery, so it was clearly the more popular one out of all the fragrances that he has, and there are some other really great ones that kind of do the same thing this one does. So that's saying something. Once again, from Christian Provenzano Parfums, this is Ambre d'Or. All right, next one's going to be coming from Savoir Faire, and this is Lovesuede. Savoir Faire, Lovesuede. Yeah, okay. I was about to say this is the only blind buy on the list. That's not true. But this was a blind buy, purely a purchase made off of what other people have said about it, particularly equality fragrances, EQ fragrances, and also just what I read about it off the website. You know, it sounded intriguing, sounded like something I would thoroughly enjoy. And let me tell you, when I first sprayed this when it came in, I was like, oh yeah, that's a successful blind buy for sure. This fragrance is basically a very watery, slightly woody, but smooth leather fragrance. Has a little bit of a kind of a bush kind of touch to it. It's almost like bushes next to the seaside. The inspiration for the scent is you're driving a sports car with a leather jacket on and some nice shades along the Pacific coast. And I haven't done that exactly. I've done like one or the other, kind of, sort of. And I think that vibe is definitely captured here. So this fragrance here is all about a vibe. The notes for it are kind of irrelevant. It's what this fragrance does in terms of where it can put you. It smells really, really good. I actually really, really like it because I kind of liken it to an alternative to Ganymede, where Ganymede is more so just kind of an intriguing scent that I just really, really like. And I think matches my personality. This one here more so matches a vibe, but it kind of smells, it doesn't smell like it, but it kind of behaves the same way, if that makes sense. It does kind of have this slightly watery, mineralic, ozonic characteristic to the fragrance, as well as a soft leather. Overall, I would say this is probably easier to wear than Ganymede. Ganymede, again, it's a little bit more interesting, a little bit more intriguing, a little bit more unique of a scent. This one's a little bit more straightforward, but boy, this stuff is good. I don't know if it took inspiration from Ganymede at all. I have no idea. I don't even know what the release date is for this, but nevertheless, great stuff here. This is an awesome fragrance that I absolutely can continue to wear in the coming months. So once again, from Savoir Faire, this is Lovesuede. All right, next one is going to be coming from Creed, and this is Millesime Imperial. Creed Millesime Imperial. Have I talked about this on the channel yet? I don't think I have. But it's not like I really need to. I know a lot of people are very familiar with this fragrance. This fragrance has been out a long time. It kind of really encapsulates the 90s fragrance smell, if you will. Two reasons I got this. Number one, I've been wanting to add more Creed fragrances that I really, really liked. So this is just kind of the next one in line, if you will, that I went on ahead and got. And I thought it was for, you know, a decent price. It was around $200, so I thought it was for a decent price, certainly better than full retail. And also it's one that I just truly appreciate the smell of it. In case you're not familiar with Millesime Imperial, kind of a fruity aquatic scent. A little bit of a melon kind of smell to it. It's a little bit salty. Some people have likened it to watermelon. I wouldn't quite go that far. I don't think it smells like salted watermelon. I think it's just like a melon kind of smell. Doesn't really smell authentic, if you will. Just the characteristic of it, but you definitely get a little bit of a saltiness. You certainly get a musky characteristic to it. There's definitely kind of a cedar and sandalwood. If you've ever smelled any popular 90s fragrances, this one kind of has that vibe to it. And if I'm being honest, I think this one just simply comes across a little bit more higher quality than some of those popular 90s fragrances, if you will. I can see why it was so popular when it came out. I see why a lot of people still love this stuff. Main complaint with this is performance and all of that. What I would say is, I don't think this is a lackluster performer. It's just not a super loud projector. I've worn this a couple times since I got it. And, you know, this is a fragrance you can kind of spray heavy. And I noticed that the musky / sandalwood characteristic of it actually stick to my skin for a very long time, maybe even up to 24 hours. But it's not going to really project that strong at that point. It does get a little bit closer to the skin as time goes along. I'm totally fine with that. I don't mind respraying it. That's me personally, but I can understand if people have an issue with that. If you do, go for one of the colognes. I'm sure those colognes are much more powerful, if you will, than this is, if that's just, a deal breaker for you. So once again, from Creed, this is Millesime Imperial with my fresh fingerprints all over it. Alright guys, next one is coming from Roja Parfums, and this is Burlington 1819. Roja Parfums Burlington 1819. A very popular fragrance from Roja Parfums, particularly within the community. It's another really great citrus fragrance. Asola Blue is pretty much my favorite fragrance out of all my Roja fragrances at this point. And I gotta say, this one is not necessarily replacing it. It's basically adjacent to it because I find it to be a similar vibe, a similar usage fragrance, but a different package, if you will. So again, citrus definitely here, grapefruit, kind of rindy citrus, which is actually different from Asola Blue, where that one's a little bit more lemon and lime focused. This one is more so rindy grapefruit, and I am here for it. And it's combining this combination of cinnamon and cumin-like spice. Cumin's gonna be a deal breaker for a lot of people. You do get a little bit of that cumin BO smell with this, but it blends with cinnamon to kind of balance it and warm it up a little bit. And man, it smells amazing to me. And with that, kind of woody, similar kind of dry down to, maybe not a similar dry down, a similar kind of base, if you will, to Asola Blue, but not, there's no like lavender in this. That's gonna be kind of the biggest difference. But it's kind of this collection of woods and spices and maybe some musky notes. There may even be a little bit of ambergris in here, stuff like that. That's just kind of makes a balanced base to this, but the star of the fragrance is the citrus and that cinnamon and cumin spice to this. Boy, I love how this smells. This one, again, like I said, very popular in the community. A lot of people are really big fans of this. This is one I had on my radar to get for a while. I just kind of kicked the pail down the road, if you will, and just finally said, all right, it's time to go ahead and get this, especially since it's starting to warm back up. And last thing I'm gonna say on this is also kind of a half blind buy. I had smelled it before, but only from the atomizer, and I think one time from a strip, but it was when I had already smelled a lot of stuff, so my nose was kind of shot at that point, so I couldn't really remember what I had smelled. But I knew that I wanted it. I knew I liked it enough to say like, hey, I'll take on whatever elements it has and discover it once I buy it, or I'll just eventually get around to smelling it again, but that never really happened. I just said, you know what, I already know I like this enough to purchase it, so I'll just go ahead and get it, and it has not disappointed at all. This is amazing stuff right here. Once again, from Roja Parfums, we have got Burlington 1819. Alright guys, the final fragrance for this video is going to be coming from Francesca Bianchi. This is Etruscan Water. Francesca Bianchi, Etruscan Water. So this one here was the other complete blind buy that I was mentioning. It's crazy because with the exception of one fragrance that I have smelled from Francesca Bianchi that I actually chose not to buy because I didn't think it made sense to add it to my collection, every fragrance I got from this house has been a blind buy, and every last one of them have impressed the heck out of me. The thing about Francesca Bianchi is if you like very bold and strong, heavy note fragrances, you're gonna like at least some of what she has to offer. If fragrances that are just a little too heavy for you are not your thing, definitely don't blind buy them. You can certainly try to sample them, but you definitely don't want to blind buy them. But this one here, man, what a successful blind buy. So what is this fragrance? This is a Chypre fragrance. It's a spicy, woody Chypre fragrance that has all of the characteristics of a classic gentleman's masculine Chypre fragrance, but mixed in with some modern sensibilities. But it still has the boldness of some of those classic Chypre fragrances. This is another one that reminds me of something that my grandfather would wear. What is it? It's Aramis. Aramis Eau de Toilette was pretty much the fragrance he wore. That is also a Chypre fragrance. This doesn't necessarily smell exactly like that, but it has a lot of those sensibilities, leathery notes, heavy tree moss, spice, especially cumin-like spice, some citrus elements as well, patchouli probably in there as well. This one makes use of a lot of those heavier notes that are considered kind of like, in my opinion, hair on your chest, old school masculine fragrances. But it has modern sensibilities to it. It's got a little bit of more sweetness than you might get from those traditional releases of fragrances like this. has some kind of resinous, rich resinous characteristics to it. I think the stuff smells absolutely fantastic. And by the way, when it dries down, it may even get you some compliments in the right environment, because the kind of more aggressive nature actually tames down a little bit as the fragrance starts to dissipate on the skin. Super powerful. I wore 3 sprays of this and I could not stop smelling it for about a good 24 hours. You don't need a lot. The fact that it comes in a small package, it packs a massive punch. I saw on Parfumo.net that some people are saying this is kind of similar to Diaghilev. I actually have a sample of Diaghilev. I need to smell it again and see if it's similar, but just kind of off my memory, I think it's a similar style of fragrance. I don't know if this is necessarily similar to Diaghilev, but obviously it is a lot cheaper, and I do think it achieves the same thing. Maybe just in a slightly different way. So I'll look into that, because I'm going to talk about this more in the future, even though this is old school, masculine, cheaper fragrance. I plan to wear this one a lot. I kind of like this one over some of the other ones that do that. I think it's a little bit more daytime oriented overall, and I wouldn't mind wearing this to work. And again, just I love how this fragrance develops on the skin, and I like those old school fragrances. So once again, from Francesca Bianchi, this is Etruscan Water. Alright guys, that is going to wrap it up for this video. If you would like to, down in the comments below, let me know what some of your recent pickups are and how they've been working out for you. I would love to see what you guys have been adding to your collections. And if you are familiar with some of these fragrances that I've talked about, feel free to share your experiences with them. Thanks again for watching all the way into the end. I really do appreciate you all. Please remember to be well and smell well. And I will see you all in the next episode of The Fragrance Well. Have a good one.